technology company employs my husband, and I am currently a stay-at-home mother to our children, ages 10, 7, and 3. At least twice a week, I go grocery shopping, and I typically go to the King Kola near our home. However, I also occasionally go to the adjacent Target. These are two of the very few food stores in our little town. To provide as much information as possible, our family is Italian, and I am 40 years old. This happened when I was 39, less than a year ago. One day, I needed to catch up on my shopping, so I went much later than usual. I ran to the store with my flyers and coupons because the King Kola near us shuts at 10, and it was already well past 9 o'clock. The children were moaning about the lack of food in the house, so I had to make a short trip to the grocery store. Haley, my 3-year-old daughter, and I had to go shopping most days because it was late and my husband was home from work. I had the rare opportunity to go shopping alone, which I consider a privilege. I arrived at the King Kola, which was quite empty at this hour due to its impending closure. I rapidly entered the aisles with a shopping cart, grabbing everything on my list in sale. I was in the cereal aisle when I was startled by a tap on my shoulder. I saw a very tanned man roughly my height wearing a baseball cap, a black coat, a red sweatshirt with a zipper, and jeans. He left after apologizing for shocking me and explaining that he'd been searching everywhere for a specific bag of chips in my cart and asking where I found them. I respectfully told him the aisle, and he stated he looked but couldn't locate it. So I walked him directly to where I discovered the chips. I smiled and would return to my cart when he began a meaningless talk about why he liked those chips so much, such as the contents or the absence of a particular ingredient. I attempted to clarify that I was inching my way back to my cart, but he was oblivious. When he made a strange pause and then remarked, "God, you're beautiful," I responded, "Thank you," and then had to return to my shopping before the store closed. I moved to my shopping cart, but he followed me and continued to speak to me. At this time, I stated as respectfully as I could that I would prefer to shop in peace. He eventually appeared to get the idea and moved away. Still, I continued to see him roaming the aisles for the remainder of my time at the shop that evening. Every time he passed the gallery I was in, he would slow down or sometimes stop and stare at me. I became increasingly uneasy and hurried through my shopping. After completing my purchase, I went to the checkout. As I emptied my shopping cart, Red Hoodie Guy, with only 2 or 3 items, appeared behind me in line. He no longer speaks, but I could feel his gaze through the back of my skull. I was finished checking out, pushed my cart away, and ignored the man's "good night, ma'am" greeting. As I unloaded my car in the parking lot, I observed Red Hoodie Guy glancing at me as he headed to his vehicle. He entered a Honda that appeared to be at least 30 years old and appeared in poor condition. However, he did not start the car. He sat in it. I finally completed loading my car, so I entered, formed, and departed the parking lot. Multiple glances in my rearview mirror revealed no oncoming headlights, so I felt comfortable driving home. When I turned into the driveway and looked to my left down the street, I noticed a car traveling slowly down the road without its headlights, approaching our house. A few homes down, he pulled up to the curb. It appeared to be that Honda from the parking lot. I entered the residence and called my spouse by name. I informed him I had been followed home by a creep when he arrived downstairs with a worried expression. He rushed outside to the front porch, but the automobile had already left. The following weekend, when we were all in bed, and it was late at night, we heard footsteps in the backyard. I shook my husband to investigate, and he opened the window. He observed a person directly below the window attempting to unlock the side gates to the backyard. However, upon hearing the window open, the man looked up and began to run. My husband grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed and raced outside. When he returned 1 minute later, he reported that he noticed the automobile driving down the street and attempted to pursue it. The Red Hoodie Guy's shabby Honda was perfectly depicted. It was unquestionably him. We called the police, and despite the late hour, a police officer was at our residence in less than 5 minutes. I accurately described the man in his car, and that was that. After seeing my enraged husband chase his vehicle on foot with a bat, he never returned to our residence. Still, it's unsettling that a pervert like that knows where I live. During my college years, I worked at Walmart. The one I worked at was 24-hour, so a few poor individuals were constantly assigned to work that dreadful shift. Since I was 20, a college student, I believed my employer would never give me an evening shift. Unfortunately, when she saw my school schedule and heard that I was off on Mondays and Wednesdays, she viewed me as an ideal candidate for occasional midnight shifts. I noticed that I had a shift on a Tuesday night from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. I had to double-check the timetable to ensure its accuracy. When I asked my supervisor why I was put on the overnight shift, he said that I had little choice if I was under 18. I pondered quitting, but I needed the job and the money, so I gritted my teeth and resolved to do it this one time before telling my boss I couldn't do it again because I had to study for school. Therefore, I arrived at the store at noon and relieved Amanda of her duties. Half of the store's lights were out to conserve energy at this hour. When I arrived, I was surprised by the number of consumers in the store. More people than I anticipated would make midnight shopping excursions. After 1 a.m., however, the establishment was entirely deserted with up to 3 clients in an hour. As the night progressed, there were fewer and fewer customers. I was as bored as humanly imaginable and hadn't had a customer in over an hour. It was after 2 a.m. There must be other personnel in the facility. I pondered their presence. I assumed that a single 20-year-old could only operate part of the business. A bald man appeared to be a manager who kept passing by the cash registers every few minutes. A key ring with approximately 10 keys was attached to his khakis, and he was carrying a tiny backpack-style bag. Therefore, I asked, "Excuse me, but are you the manager?" I responded that it was my first night shift when he inquired whether it was my first day on the job. He shook my hand without providing his name and asked if I could sort the pallets in the store's back warehouse. He stated he would guard the front. I had no idea what that meant, but I will figure it out. As I proceeded towards the back of the store, I observed him doing something to the entrance door as if he were attempting to lock it by reaching for a switch on its side. I entered the back warehouse, where I observed a tall man who appeared to be 30 years old and was wearing a manager's vest with the words Walmart. Upon noticing my apron, he identified himself as Rob, the night manager. I responded, "Oh, I thought the gentleman in front was the night manager," to which he replied, "Who?" Because he was the only manager on duty. He requested me to show him who I was referring to when I described that individual from earlier. We did not even leave the warehouse when the store's lights went off. Rob instructed me to wait in the warehouse while he investigated the situation. I observed as he proceeded through the warehouse doors into the darkness of the store, with the only light coming from the still-lit dairy refrigerators. I was sitting on a box on the pallet and texting any pals who might have been awake to let them know what was occurring when I heard the warehouse door open. It was on the opposite side of the warehouse from the freezer and dairy refrigerator. There were 2 entrances and exits back into the store from the warehouse. I continued to sit there. My ears perked up as I listened for any sounds. I heard slow, quiet footsteps approaching and the voice, "Hey, kid, are you in here?" However, it was not Rob's voice, but that bald guy. I quickly exited the warehouse and entered the store in silence. I ran to the front of the store in search of Rob, but I could not locate him. I yelled his name, but he did not respond. I grabbed my coat and attempted to unlock the exit door manually when it failed to open automatically. However, it was locked. I almost yelled as I heard footsteps approaching from behind me, but then I realized it was Rob, the manager. He flipped a lever or something on the door's upper right to unlock it and whispered for everyone to exit immediately. We left the store together with him in tow. I overheard his talk with the police when we immediately connected with them by phone. He stated that he felt an armed individual had locked himself inside Walmart and attempted to commit a robbery. I requested that he communicate to the operator that I believed he would hurt me in the warehouse, which he did. I'm sure he instructed me to wait in my car or leave because he didn't want the store to be held liable if something were to go wrong. Within 10 minutes, at least 4 police cars were parked in front of the business where I'd gone to observe my vehicle. They all went inside for a while, and I could not follow what was happening, so I departed. However, I did not quit after that. The next time I reported to work, my supervisor informed me of what had transpired. The surveillance tape showed the bald man acting suspiciously as he circled the building, trying to see if he could perform whatever he had planned after closing the doors. He turned off the lights in the shop. The cameras captured him proceeding directly to the warehouse he instructed me to visit. If he had been armed and robbing the establishment, he could have been on his way to shoot me or anything. The video captured him fleeing the warehouse using the emergency escape well before the police arrived. After speaking with my supervisor, I never worked another overnight shift. I remained in that position for a few more months. I wonder if that individual was ever identified. I worked as a night replenishment employee in a somewhat rural supermarket. Its name was Great American, the area's largest and most reputable supermarket. My shift would begin when the store closed at 10 p.m. I would labor from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. replenishing shelves and organizing everything before the next business day. I had the store's keys for after-hours access. It would be a two-person squad of myself and Terry Carter or Alfonso. Tonight, I was scheduled to collaborate with Terry. Upon my arrival, I entered the store's back room where the unshelled merchandise was located. Using the pallet jack, I brought an entire pallet of boxes out to the retail floor as my first task. I began by shifting the older loaves to the front and placing the younger loaves in the back of the bread and nut aisle. I realized halfway through that I hadn't seen Terry yet. I made my way to the back of the store, where the stock was kept and where we stored our possessions. He had yet to return. I left the back door slightly ajar with a door stopper for his arrival, then returned to work for another half hour. Still unable to locate Terry, I returned to the back of the store. Although he was not present, I observed that the back door was locked. I assumed that indicated Terry was there in the vicinity. When I went to enter the back door, I noticed the door stopper was outside. I found it odd that he had kicked it out rather than bringing it inside. I called Terry's name, which resonated across the room, but he did not respond. I decided to phone him. I asked him if he was at work after answering the phone, sounding like he was in bed. He stated he will be absent tonight due to illness. I suddenly felt chills. I told him someone kicked the door stopper off the door, and he claimed it could have just come undone itself. No other employees were scheduled to work that evening. I wished him well, and we hung up the phone. I wasn't confident that the door would come undone because I kicked it under the door so hard. I quickly scanned the area to ensure that no one was in the back of the business. When I didn't see anyone, I returned to work with a tiny feeling of unease as I stocked the remaining bread. When I heard a loud boom reverberating from across the shopping floor, I got up from my knees. I proceeded to the aisle that intersected the other galleries. I stared directly down the hall and paused for a split second. A man dressed in black strolled past the middle aisle on the opposite side of the supermarket, in the dairy aisle, while looking in my direction. I felt my heart rate fall. It resembled the sign seen where the alien wanders by the birthday party. I was forced to consider the possibility that Terry's shift was being covered by a substitute our employer had not informed me about. I began to move quickly down the center aisle and cried, "Excuse me," at the top of my lungs. I scanned the left side of every aisle I passed as he entered the store through one of those aisles. He was waiting for me at the end of the corridor, confronting me directly. When he noticed me, he left in the direction I had just come from. I again cried, "Excuse me," and ran down the aisle to catch up with him. I have yet to have a good look at his face. When I reached the front of the aisle, at the cash registers, I peered in his direction and spotted him at the end by the bread aisle. The shelf concealed half of his torso. His mouth was wide open, and he began waving me over, but he did not speak. His face was terrifying me. Again, I sought to communicate with him and said, "Who are you?" He then vanished behind the shelf. I should have been adequately compensated for this. I stepped outside to call my boss from my car. I told him a weird freak was roaming the store when he answered the phone. He instructed me to get him out of there if I could or to call the police. I was unwilling to remove a psychopath from the store physically, so I dialed 911. I waited in my vehicle until a police vehicle arrived. I greeted the officer and requested his company inside. As we walked around the building searching for the man, we again spotted him eerily standing in one of the aisles as if playing a game. When the officer ordered him to come here, he indeed complied. He was placed in handcuffs, and I had never seen a stranger man. He never stopped smiling and gazing at me while licking his lips. He had enormous under-eye bags. He only spoke when he told the police officer he was searching for a snack. I did not appreciate how he regarded me as the police officer escorted him back to his vehicle. This scary, threatening smile is one I have never forgotten. I continued working afterward. I never again left any doors unlocked.